Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. I am so happy to be with all of my geeks again, and anybody listening on the radio who might be new here, anybody even listening to the podcast that might be new here, welcome into Geek Therapy Radio, where we are all geeks about something. No matter what you're into, no matter what your hobbies are, we're all geeks about something. You can be a geek about muscle cars. You can be a geek about bodybuilding even. You can be a geek about cameras, astronomy, photography, videography, computers, computer gaming, audio, oils, pastels, paints, pencil art, like any sort of hobby, any sort of geekdom. We're all geeks about something. That is the whole motto of Geek Therapy Radio. No matter what background you come from, politically, religiously, ethnically, any of that, we are all geeks about something, and that's something we always have in common. Maybe we don't have the same geek things in common, geek hobbies in common, but we all have something in common, that we care about something deeply outside of our normal kind of work life. We all have something that brings us joy and brings us peace, and those are our geek things, and that's what we celebrate here on Geek Therapy Radio. You can find Geek Therapy Radio, just to get all the plugs out of the way, Geek Therapy Radio podcast on all your favorite podcast players, of course, the iHeartRadio app, Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Basically, any way you listen to podcasts, just type in Geek Therapy Radio podcast, and that's how you've got me. You can also email me directly, johnny@geektherapyradio.com, just JOHNNY @geektherapyradio.com, and of course, YouTube and social media, all that good stuff, Instagram. I do have a TikTok that I need to upload more to, but whatever social media, Facebook, X, just type in Geek Therapy Radio podcast, and you are good to go. Okay, so for at least this first segment, and if you are a regular listener to the show, you know that it may very well go on beyond the first segment, but I think what I want to talk about in this first segment is kind of the cameras I've been using over the past year or so, kind of what I've settled into for my videography work. For those of you who don't know, I am the YouTube manager for the Houston Museum of Natural Science. So I'm editing a lot of video, I'm shooting a lot of video. I have my backpack full of drones and video cameras with me at all time. Now, actually, since I'm 40 years old and I have a bad back, I'm starting to take care of my back a little better. And I have a videography roller bag. It's really, really cool. It's a newer, let me look at it real quick while I'm recording right here. Yeah, it's a newer. You can find them on Amazon all day long. What's the model number? I'll find the model number and I will put it in the description of this podcast. If you watch this on YouTube, or if you're just listening to it in your favorite podcast player, just look at the description. I will actually put links to everything that I'm about to mention in this show. But what I first want to talk about is kind of my camera setup and what I've been using day to day. If you're watching this YouTube video right now, yes, I'm uploading this episode to YouTube, you are seeing my Sony ZV-1. It is possibly the best, dollar for dollar at least, compact point-and-shoot camera right now in the world. It's a 1-inch sensor. I know that a company or two do make full-frame compacts, not as small as the Sony ZV-1, but then you're talking about interchangeable lenses and all sorts of things. But the best point-and-shoot compact camera right now for anything, it's such a versatile camera, is the Sony ZV-1. The ZV-E1 is a fixed aperture. What is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Fixed focal length. Sorry about that. Where the Sony ZV-1 is a variable focal length. So I'll look some stats up right here. I ordered on Amazon a while back. The focal length is between 24 and 70 millimeters. So 24 and 70 millimeters, what that means is it's going to, 24 is a good, decent wide angle. Actually, what you're looking at right now, if you're watching the YouTube channel, is the fullest wide angle, 24 millimeter wide angle, and then you can also zoom it in all the way to 70 millimeters. Let's see if I can do that in real time on YouTube here. But while I'm doing that, I will tell you that 70 millimeters is an excellent kind of telephoto range, medium telephoto range, photographers and videographers would say. That's great for portraits. That's great for taking portraits of people, taking photographs of subjects and separating them out from the background behind them, getting that nice bokeh or bokeh, however you want to pronounce it, behind the subject. So picture, a pretty girl standing there in front of a forest, and she's 100 yards in front of the forest. You use a 70 millimeter focal length to focus on the subject, focus on the girl's face, and then it blurs out all the trees kind of nicely behind her. That's with 70 millimeters. Now that also depends on the sensor size of the camera. So 70 millimeters, like on your cell phone, for instance, that's a teeny little sensor. So you're not going to get as much background blur as you would with a bigger sensor. So the bigger sensors are things like Micro Four Thirds and actually like full frame. Full frame is a full 35 millimeter frame. So full frame is going to give you nice background blur versus a smaller sensor. The sensor in the Sony ZV-1 is a 1-inch sensor. So it's not the biggest sensor in the world, but 1 inch is a really, really good run and gun sensor size, especially for a point and shoot camera like this, like the Sony ZV-1. A 1-inch sensor is excellent. That allows you to get some of that background blur and that bokeh behind you, and bokeh, whatever you want to call it. And it gathers a lot more light than a smaller sensor would. So like if you're trying to take pictures with your smartphone, yes, your smartphone's going to use a whole lot of enhancing and AI and such to kind of take better low light photos at night or in dim situations. But there's, as we say in the automotive world, there's no replacement for displacement. So you don't need to use all the AI and enhancements. If you have a large full frame sensor or even a 1-inch sensor, that's just a bigger source of gathering light. You can think about it exactly like astronomy with telescopes. So a 4-inch telescope versus an 8-inch telescope versus a 12-inch in diameter telescope versus a 36-inch in diameter mirror telescope. It's all about how much light you can gather. So that big 3-foot wide mirror on that reflector telescope is going to gather a whole lot more light and let you see a lot deeper and dimmer into space. Same exact thing with camera sensors. The bigger the sensor, the more light you can capture. The smaller the sensor, the less light you can capture, the more noise you're going to get in your images, the more AI kind of noise reduction that's going to have to be used. But the Sony ZV-1 has a 1-inch sensor. Let's talk a little bit more about the Sony ZV-1 when we come back. You're listening to Geek Therapy Radio. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Sorry, got to clear my throat a little bit. I haven't eaten lunch yet as of recording, and I'm eating a nice little bag of Doritos, leftovers from our road trip to Virginia recently. So anyways, I was talking about the Sony ZV-1. That is a camera that you have been actually using a lot. It is the ultimate. I guess this is a good segment for me to explain to you why I love the ZV-1. A lot of times, those of us, most of us, who have a little bit of gear lust, I would say, we're kind of always perusing Amazon and Best Buy and looking around the internet and reading reviews and watching video reviews of different cameras and kind of what's out and what's best for my situation, da-da-da-da-da. I had been looking at the Sony ZV-1 for a while. My main shooter is the excellent Panasonic Lumix S5. It is the first generation. It is not the S5 Mark II or the S5 Mark II X, which is definitely on my list. I definitely want the Lumix S5 Mark II X to add to my tool bag, so to speak, and move the first generation S5 to kind of B-cam role, because the second gen, the Mark II of the Lumix S5 cameras have the way better phase detect, autofocus, and radar assisted and LiDAR and all that kind of stuff. So Sony, looking right now at the Sony ZV-1, Sonys are known for their astronomically good autofocus. I have it kind of trying to track my face right now. So Sony's and Canon's, for that matter, have been known for their industry leading, just far and away the best autofocus systems in the world. So now the Lumix S5 Mark II has that. I want the Lumix S5 Mark II X, which is more catered toward videography. It has more tools and features that videographers will use, such as like IP streaming. It has it's like better fans, but it can run longer. It can shoot its native 6K onto an SD card. Like there's just a bunch of different features about the Lumix S5 Mark II X that make it a dream camera for somebody like me. But I just recently bought a drone. I recently bought the DJI Mavic 3 Pro with the triple sensors on there, with the triple lenses on there. Excellent drone. I still have my Mini 3 Pro. My Mini 3 Pro is my run and gun drone. Like, speaking of run and gun, we're talking about the Sony ZV-1, which is what, if you're watching YouTube right now, that's the camera you're looking at right now as I'm recording. My ultimate run and gun setup, like my EDC, my everyday carry for I'm going out in the field and I can't bring much. I can only bring a couple things with me literally as I'm running and gunning out in the field filming things. First, this Sony ZV-1, hands down. I also have, GoPros and Insta360 cams and everything like that. But if I'm only carrying one main shooter, it's the Sony ZV-1. 100% as a run and gun, throw it in your pocket and go, and know that you're going to capture excellent Sony quality footage on a 1-inch sensor, have that infinitely usable 24mm to 70mm zoom range, telephoto range. It's just the codecs in it are excellent. The Sony color profiles, everything, and you can shoot to S-Log and S-Log2 and all sorts of different color gradable color profiles, shooting 10-bit video. It's excellent. The Sony ZV-1, and it goes right in your pocket. I can't even demonstrate, if you're just kind of watching this on YouTube or listening to the radio or listening to the podcast, how small this is. Like, it's small. It's way smaller than your cell phone. It probably doesn't weigh any less. It probably weighs a little more than your smartphone. But as far as like the surface area that it takes up on a desk, it's way smaller. And perhaps I can show that here on YouTube, obviously. But it's very small. It goes right in your pocket. It's not much bigger than your wallet, actually, as far as how wide it is. It's a little thicker than your wallet, obviously, unless you're a baller with that kind of Skrilla. If your wallet is thicker than a point-and-shoot camera, you're probably pretty rich or very untidy with your wallet. You got that George Costanza wallet, where he sits and like one butt cheek is lifted way up in the air, so he's always sitting at a tilt because he never cleans out the coupons and preferred customer cards and stuff in his wallet. No. So what I do, and this is full on dad mode, this is full on like videographer mode, is if I'm running and gunning, I can't even have a backpack with me. I have bought these like Dickies cargo pants. I have cargo shorts and cargo long khaki pants that have the extra pockets kind of down on the thigh area above the knee. So what I do is I have my phone and wallet in my front right pocket, my keys and whatever in my front left pocket, maybe even that Sony ZV-1. But in the pants, I will have probably the Sony ZV-1, a selfie stick kind of tripod, all in one thing, sit in the same pocket, like retractable. In the other pocket, and I might have a couple other things, extra batteries for the ZV-1, for instance. And then in the other pocket of the cargo pants, like in pocket number 4, that's where I will literally keep my my Mini 3 Pro, my drone, my small drone, my sub 249 milligram drone, the DJI Mini 3 Pro. I'll put that in the 4th pocket. That the controller, the DJI RC, that fits in one of the cargo pockets too. So in my cargo pants at any given time for the super like lightweight run and gun, one pocket has the DJI Mini 3 Pro drone. The other pocket has a Sony ZV-1, and then maybe the DJI RC for the drone with the Sony ZV-1 in that pocket. In the other pocket, I'll have a kind of retractable selfie stick with tripod on it so that I can mount the camera various places when I'm running and gunning. And I think I still have enough space left over for like the little Sony batteries, which That's the only knock, or maybe like a battery bank, a small, maybe 5,000 milliamp hour battery bank. That's my ultimate run and gun. No backpack, just some cargo pants or cargo shorts, and that's how I'm running. Sony ZV-1 point and shoot, and the DJI Mini 3 Pro, and the couple batteries for the Sony. So the Sony, that's one of my only knocks against the Sony. There's one knock, and then there's a nitpick. The knock is that the battery life for the Sony ZV-1 using the Sony, what are these tiny batteries called? They're not MP. What are they? Little tiny Sony batteries for the point and shoots. You're all familiar. Y'all remember 2007 and point and shoot cameras and the little batteries inside of them, the little flat gum stick looking batteries? That's basically what it is. And the battery life is abysmal. As I'm recording right now, you might be wondering, well, how are you just kind of dead rolling for YouTube here? How are you recording all in one big long 40-minute file, for instance? That would kill a lot of cameras. I have it plugged in USB Type-C. It takes power over USB Type-C. And it's not Type-C, excuse me. It is still mini USB, micro USB. That is kind of, I guess, another knock against it. It is not Type-C. The data and power port on the Sony ZV-1 is not Type-C yet. Hopefully they'll change that soon. It is micro USB, but it can be powered forever over the micro USB. When you plug in the micro USB from a power supply, the camera just doesn't shut off. It'll just roll as long as it can, especially in 1080 mode. I don't think there's a limit to the length of recording in 1080, which is how I'm recording it right now. For the nerds, the settings I'm using right now, if you're watching YouTube, are shutter speed of 1/50, f1.8, and the ISO is at 160. So, and autofocus is on. The nitpick is that autofocus. It's great. Autofocus is absolutely fantastic. And the fact that it does have a manual focus mode that you can tap on the screen where you want it to focus and it holds that focus. For instance, I will tap on YouTube right now on the wall kind of behind me. It should be focused on the wall behind me. Then I'll tap over on my face and it should kind of be focused on my face. And I'm going to hit the center button to go back to autofocus mode. I wish, this is a nitpick, I wish it had a ring around the lens that I could adjust focus manually. I wish it was truly finger adjustable manual focus, but that's just kind of a nitpick. Let's talk more about the ZV-1 in my thoughts on it, and having used it for 6 or 7 months now. When we come back, you're listening to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, Johnny, Johnnny, at geektherapyradio.com is how you can email me directly. You can also hit the chat bubble at geektherapyradio.com. Sometimes I'm on there. Like sometimes I'm on the website working on something or kind of just checking it out. And you might be able to see me online there. I'm not sure kind of how that chat works, other than I know if you click that little red chat bubble, it'll just email me your message directly. That's how you contact me. When you go to geektherapyradio.com, the only thing you're going to see at this point is just the background, which is a cassette. So that's how you know it's Geek Therapy Radio, of course. And then the most recent 3 or 4 or 5 episodes, podcasts of Geek Therapy Radio. And then one of the bottom corners or wherever on the screen, you'll see a little chat bubble, which is how you send me messages directly. It does not sign you up for any sort of email list. It is not sending you, hey, a new episode of Geek Therapy Radio is out. Hey, you want to contribute to Patreon? Hey, you want to buy a coffee mug from Geek Therapy? It's none of that. It's literally, it's as if you're just text messaging me. It's as if you knew me personally and you're just saying, hey, Johnny, what's up? That's what happens. It goes to my geektherapyradio.com email account. I just see it. As soon as it comes in, my email will have a push notification. So anyways, that's a way to get in touch with me directly. Just go to geektherapyradio.com or email me, Johnnny, Johnny, at geektherapyradio.com. So As it turns out, I'm spending darn near most of the show at this point talking about the Sony ZV-1, which is the ultimate and the best, to my knowledge, point and shoot run and gun camera. It's got a 1-inch sensor, that 24 millimeter to 70 millimeter zoom range, so you have that good, decent 24 millimeter wide angle, and then you could go all the way up to 70 millimeters, which is a good portrait range for taking, more telephoto type pictures, compressing that background against the subject and maybe using some bokeh to blur it out. And since it's got a 1-inch sensor, you've got some flexibility. Did I even mention, this is what I wanted to use this segment about, that every time I use the Sony ZV-1, I'm constantly blown away. Like, this is such a great camera. It's maybe people are sleeping on. I don't know. I know it's very popular. You'll see like vloggers and things maybe using the Sony ZV-1 in their repertoire. But as I use it, the more I kind of understand and realize that this is like one of the best multi-tool cameras, one of the most versatile cameras on the planet right now. As a matter of fact, if someone said to me, should I use, as much as I love my Lumix S5, if I were to give up one camera and I only had to use one camera, I had no choice but to either my full frame Lumix S5, which is a absolutely fantastic camera, both photography and videography, or give up my Sony ZV-1. If I only had to pick one, could only have one forever, it's the Sony ZV-1. It's the most versatile, and it's kind of like the Volkswagen GTI of cameras, and those of you who kind of know what I'm talking about, maybe your version, maybe it's not Volkswagen GTI for you. Like, if there's one car ever, like the only car you could ever have for the rest of your life, and you have to remember that this car has to fit your whole life. It has to check every box as well as it can. So some people might say, well, if I can only have one car for my whole life, I want a Ferrari or I want a Lamborghini or whatever. Like I wish I had a Lamborghini Countach as my only car. I wish I had a Ferrari F50 as my only car. Those are not going to tick every box. They're going to be the go fast and drink a lot of fuel box, but they're not going to be a good grocery hauler. They're not going to be able to haul some household items from Lowe's or Home Depot. They're not going to be able to cart kids around. They're not going to be able to be efficient on gas. They're not going to be able to hold a lot of boxes in the back. They're not checking that practicality box. So like a GTI or a hatchback, like a Honda Civic hatchback or any sort of like a Chevy hatchback, whatever, the GTI for me is like the best car if you can only pick one car in the world ever. It's efficient. It's very fast and very fun to drive. It's a hot hatch, so it checks the fun box more than I've had a couple of GTI. Like, I freaking love GTIs. They're so fun to drive and so quick. You can make them quicker because most of them are turbos and whatever. You can tune them if you want to, but it also has 4 seats, sometimes even 4 or 5 doors, plus the the hatchback in the back. The real interior volume for your random trips to Lowe's or Home Depot. Actual seating for 1 to 2, maybe even 3 child seats for if your family grows, but it's still, as your family grows and as you're doing the Home Depot runs, it's still plenty fast, 200 something odd horsepower, or you can easily chip it up to like 300 something horsepower for like $1,000. It's such a versatile car, and it checks every box like very well. That's what the Sony ZV-1 is as a camera to me. It is not. The image is not as good as the full frame image on my Lumix S5, but it is still an exceptional image, still very usable image, and you can choose it from a variety of frame rates, everything from like, I think you can go 960 frames per second at standard resolution, and you can even go 1080p at 120 frames a second, 4K 60 frames a second, but you can also choose those more useful cinematic frame rates. For instance, right now I'm just running at 1080p and 24 frames a second, 50 megabits per second on the codec. So it's very versatile. You can choose 24 frames a second, 30 frames a second, and by 24 and 30, what I really mean is it? I need to check. Is it 23 drop frame or 24 drop frame and 30 drop frame is like 29.997 or 23.94? For all intents and purposes, it's 24 frames a second, 30 frames a second, 60 frames a second, 120 frames a second, all the way up to 960 frames a second if you're going to shoot a 960 slow-mo clip in standard resolution. So you have lots of versatile options to use for video frame rates, even bit rates. You can even choose color profiles. You can shoot it in a log. I'm not shooting in a log profile right now, but you can shoot it in Sony log so that you can go back and color grade to your heart's content. It's just a magnificent, magnificent camera for video work, even though it's technically not a full frame and therefore won't have that full frame look in a lot of situations. But it is so well-rounded. Obviously, it takes great still photos as well. But here's what matters to the videographers and people who work with a lot of video, a lot in vloggers and different things like that. It's the camera version of port selection. I mentioned that it's a knock that it's a micro USB port for its data and its power, but you can work around that. There are still micro USB cables around. I just wish it was Type C, so you could just use one cable for everything, basically. But you also have a microphone or line input jack, and you have an HDMI out with a clean feed. You can use this as a webcam. You can use this for Twitch streaming, YouTube streaming, like live streaming your gameplay, whatever. When you plug into the HDMI port, you can have it set to just a clean HDMI output. I'm pretty sure it's 10-bit. Don't quote me on that. It's very usable. I've used it. I've used my clean HDMI output from the Sony ZV-1 right into OBS before. So you have that HDMI output, which I'm sure if you go into like an Atmos Ninja or something like that, you can record at a lot higher, quality out of that HDMI port. You could probably go raw HDMI output out of it. Don't quote me. I need to check that. I'll verify that. So it's got those three ports. You have the micro USB, which, yeah, whatever. But you have the HDMI, and you also have the line input and microphone input, which is super important. You might be listening to this right now and thinking, wow, why are those inputs and outputs, HDMI and microphone line in and out, so important? My camera, my smartphone doesn't have a line input, jack on it or an HDMI out, and it takes, good enough. When you're working with kind of more higher end video kind of productions and you want way more control over your edit and what you're doing, and maybe you don't want to use the built-in microphone to the camera or to your smartphone, you need that microphone input to plug in whatever microphone or lavaliers you want or sound mixer you want. DJI mics are freaking, that is part of my EDC. I mean, DJI mics, I sound like a shill for DJI, but they're such game changers. If you do video work, if you're running and gunning and doing video work, DJI mics are absolutely indispensable now. And they're like $300, the first generation at least, but I don't know what by the time you're watching this or listening to this, they might have the second gen DJI mics that will undoubtedly have 32-bit float recording. But as of now, I've got the first gen. They were like $300, $350. You could easily spend even if DJI had the DJI mics at $2,000, like $1,500 to $2,000, there still would be no buyer's remorse. You'd buy them for $1,500 or $2,000 and be like, these are so useful, these are so indispensable now to my kit that even at that price it wouldn't be a remorse. But it's $300 or $350. Sometimes it goes under $300 for the first gen DJI mics, and they're indispensable. Let me finish up talking about the Sony ZV-1 when we come back. You are listening to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. The microphone in the ZV-1 is actually not bad for a kind of ambient, multi-directional microphone, but nothing's going to beat a good condenser or a lav right on the source. Anyways, more Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. For some reason, I've spent this entire episode talking about the Sony ZV-1 point-and-shoot camera that, as a quick recap, I find to be indispensable for my everyday carry. It is such a versatile camera in almost any situation that it's kind of the hatchback of cameras. Whereas the hatchback cars are kind of the most check every box of fun to drive, economical, can fit a lot of Lowe's boxes in their Home Depot boxes, can also fit a bunch of kids, also be good on gas, also be fun to drive, be everything for everybody at any kind of given moment in their life. That's kind of what the Sony ZV-1 camera is. It's a point and shoot. 1-inch sensor, 24mm to 70mm zoom range. You got a good wide angle, the 24mm wide angle, and then that kind of medium telephoto portrait 70mm mode. And since you have that 1-inch sensor, you can play with your settings. You can get some depth of field going behind you, some bokeh, some separation of the subject in the background going because of that nice big 1-inch sensor. Also means you're gonna have good low light performance with an actual 1-inch sensor, no replacement for displacement kind of thing. And it's just a wonderful all-around camera. And most importantly, the image looks great. The image coming out of it, even if you don't use a log profile to later, color grade yourself, and you're just kind of using Sony's built-in color profiles for, regular Rec 709, it looks absolutely fantastic. I'm recording. I know YouTube is going to smash this and do whatever it does to the video once it's uploaded, but I am recording my camera right now, my Sony ZV-1, at 24 frames a second and a bit rate of 50 megabits per second, and it looks great. It's 1080p. This is not a 4K video. I could easily record, 4K 24 frames a second with this camera. I think it's 150 megabits per second 4K on this camera. But you just have all those options, and the image looks great. Even at 1080, it's going to look nice and sharp and crisp and clear, and the skin tone should look pretty decent. And, color banding is going to be one thing because I'm going to upload it to YouTube, and it's going to get converted down to 8-bit no matter what I'm recording at. And whatever, but it still should look good. You're watching YouTube right now. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're seeing things and they're sharp, you see my microphone, see my face, color should be pretty natural. So it's such a versatile camera, the Sony ZV-1, and it's a point and shoot. It's the size of a point and shoot. It is probably smaller than your wallet. It is definitely smaller as far as surface area than your smartphone, but it has all these features: HDMI output, microphone and line input, micro USB, unfortunately, for power and data. You've got that 1/4-inch thread on the bottom, so it mounts to different things. The built-in camera sounds decent for what it is. And you can pair it with, here's what I use it a lot for, is I usually pair this camera up with my audio solution of choice is the DJI mics. Let me see if I can reach them in my bag here and show them on YouTube. So I'm back here, I'm holding up on YouTube. You can see the case for my DJI mics. I don't know if the camera's going to focus in on that. I don't have it in product mode. You can put this camera in product mode, the Sony ZV-1 in product mode, which means when you hold something up, towards the lens, it knows, hey, this person's holding something up. Let's focus on what they're holding up. I do not have that. I'm not using that mode right now, so I don't know if that's going to work on the YouTube. We'll see. We'll see if it's smart enough to know that, oh, even though we're not in product mode, he's holding something up. We'll see. But these are the DJI mics. These are what I use to pump audio into my Sony ZV-1 and my Lumix S5 for that matter. I use this. This is the receiver. This is what goes. Hopefully, maybe it'll focus on it, maybe not. This is what goes. It did focus on it. Awesome. And you can see the good bokeh in the background. You can see that 1-inch sensor in full effect, blurring out the background behind my subject here. But this is the receiver for the DJI mics, and this is what slides into the shoe of the camera, and then you go out with a little 1/8 TRS cable into the line input of the camera. So this thing sits on top of my Sony ZV-1, and then I have two of these transmitters that. This sounds like an ad for DJI, even though it's not. You can see on the YouTube video that I have put a black piece of electrical tape over the DJI logo because I don't want that shiny thing on camera and being a giant ad for DJI when I record things for the museum. So I've blacked out the logo on my transmitters. But I want to show you what's cool about these transmitters. So you have the clip. As usual, look how good this camera looks. The Sony ZV-1. This is amazing. There's my face again. It detected it, and I'll go back to what's in front of me, and it's gonna do a pretty good job of focusing. I say that now on what I'm holding in front of the camera. So, anyways, the clip on the DJI mic. You got this clip, but you also have this game changer. It's a very strong neodymium magnet that clips onto the clip itself. So now that gives you versatility to clip it and hide it in more areas of the body, on the shirt, on the lapel, whatever. You can have this mic kind of like the bulk of it inside the lapel hidden, and then only have this little black square on the lapel. You could barely notice anything's there. But the magnet makes it super versatile to put this mic anywhere. The omnidirectional microphone on the DJI mic lapel here sounds exceptional. You see the Sony kind of struggling to focus. Again, this is not in product mode, but the built-in microphone sounds great. You also have another input, so you can plug in your own lapels, your own microphones to the transmitter. Guitarists, you plug your music output, your audio output from your keyboard, from your electric guitar, from your pedals, whatever, into this, and you can transmit it over to your amp, over to the soundboard, whatever. It's amazing. You can also, since this is a clip and there's that magnet clip, you can attach it inside the sound hole of your acoustic guitar. You can clip it to the sound hole of your acoustic guitar, clip the other mic up on your collar, and you're a one-man band. You're a one-girl band, whatever you want to, whatever. They're so versatile in that way. So you also, we're not done yet. It does have Type-C for data on the side, and there's 8 gigabytes of internal memory on these Gen 1 DJI mics. So it can record for like 14 or 17 hours straight into I think that's wave actually, into wave format, into the microphone itself. But you also have the Type-C to offload it. And you got the record buttons on the side and the power buttons on the side of the microphone here. So you can be dead rolling on recording with the microphone. So in between takes, you're not losing anything. It's like a really good backup. So yeah, these DJI mics, they are always living with my Sony ZV-1, which if you're watching YouTube, you're seeing here. I can't recommend them enough. And probably the best part about the DJI Mic 2s that are about to come out as of recording, they're probably going to come out soon. The best part about the DJI Mic 2s, or the second generation DJI mics, it's kind of like Apple M1, M2, M3. The best part of M2 and M3 is that M1 is so cheap now. That's the same situation for the DJI mics. When the second generation comes out, the best thing about that is that the first generation are going to get all the cheaper, because they are absolutely fantastic. And like I said for the previous segment, it's one of those products that costs like $300 or something like that. I think you get on sale a little cheaper, but even if you spent $1,500 on it, $2,000 on it, there would be no buyer's remorse. It is that useful in a videographer's kit, or vlogger's kit, whatever video work we do. DJI mics are such an indispensable game changer that they're worth so much more. And even at $300, it's like a steal. I promise anybody who gets, any videographer, anybody who does video work, gets DJI mics, they'll feel the exact same way. Because I've never met somebody who's like, oh, these aren't good. These aren't working out for me. What? That's okay. I don't even know what your situation's going on. Maybe your Hollywood film set. I have no idea. They EQ really nice. Well, also they EQ great. That you can make them sound even better if you know what you're doing with EQ and compression. But anyways, I've been talking mostly about the Sony ZV-1 point and shoot, the best all-around camera in the world right now, in my opinion, the hatchback of video and photography cameras, and the DJI Mic 2 to a lesser extent, the DJI mics to the lesser extent. But that's just what I wanted to geek out about today. If you're listening to Geek Therapy Radio, thank you so much for listening. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of giving love. You are worthy of receiving love. And you are worthy of your own self-respect. Dive into your geek thing, enjoy your geek thing, share your geek thing, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care.